In this video, I want to explore what I see as key areas of crazy making gobbledygook in the New Age metaphysical type of terrain. And there's a lot, and so we'll just see how far we get. Now, just to give a little bit of context around this, I've grown up with hippie New Age parents. I've started working extensively in this arena with, starting at around age 12, reading Rudolf Steiner, working with the channel Lazarus, working with the channel Seth, reading hundreds of biographies, listening to the Nightingale Conant library, with Wayne Dyer and Napoleon Hill and that whole batch of positive thinkers, Norman Vincent Peale, etc., etc. And the first thing that I want to do is say that most of it is absolutely wonderful relative to the alternative. We've got to keep in mind that everything is on this infinite continuum from, stuff that pulls you back to stuff that pulls you forward. And on that continuum, there's no ultimate good or evil, good or bad. It's relative to your position. But there are some things that are much more easy to confuse and create problems than others. So the first thing that I notice and dwell on is the use of the word you. And I'll focus on the channel Lazarus. So if I say, "How are you doing?" you, of course, check in. What feelings are you conscious of? What thoughts are you conscious of? What's going on in your life? How's your work, your health, etc. And you respond based on that data. This is the common reference for the word you. Now, Lazarus will indiscriminately switch over to another undefined definition of you. He will say, well, you chose your parents for this and this and this reason. And you check in and you say, do I have any memory of choosing my parents? Do I agree with those reasons? Does that sound like me? Like the way I live my life and all that, does it sound like that's the kind of thing that I would do, even if I was sleepwalking? You say, no, no, no. And so the question is, why can't a do-gooder, an advice giver, a channel, particularly a channel like Lazarus that has stated that they have a clearer vision of human doings and functionings than human beings do, and that they're the brightest energy and resonance to ever touch the planet. And it's particularly puzzling given Lazarus's exquisite articulation in other areas. So it's not as if Lazarus lacks a vocabulary or lacks attention to detail. So how come Lazarus and many other people choose the crazy-making path to confuse this mysterious, completely out-of-character you that no one I've ever met has any memory of, with the clear, consistent, integrated character of the you that you would reference when we normally talk, and use the same name? Why not say, this is a figment of you from this perspective, bound by these things, and this is how we see it, and this is how you can see it as well. So from my perspective, crazy making, potentially shaming, potentially threatening. If you've got a you that is acting out of alignment with your own values, goals, etc., etc. For example, Lazarus told me personally that I had chosen this lifetime to deal with loneliness. That I wanted to experience loneliness. Who's this me that thinks that's a great use of a lifetime? Where are they? And I think the second craziness that I want to dwell on comes into the human rational mind that, particularly like within the Lazarus community or within metaphysicians, comes in to speculate and bolster this craziness, because the craziness is started as soon as you say you and make no discernment. It's like if I say right finger and right finger, it's like, no, they're not both the same right finger. The reason we say right finger and left finger is to differentiate and create sanity. Because if we said right finger and they're doing completely opposite things, as in the analogy of this you and you would be insane. You would not have a clear picture. If we say left hand is doing this, right hand is doing this, left you is doing this, right you is doing this, left you thinks like this, right you is thinking this, you have the vague possibility of sanity, because you still have the insanity that this part is completely conscious. And if people who have worked with a channel or a therapist or a Lazarus for 30 years still have no memory and no conscious recollection of left you, is it useful to talk about it? I mean, like, would you bring up a Swiss bank account that you're never going to touch? You have no memory of bringing it there, no way of accessing the money, no number. But by the way, you have $3 billion in a Swiss bank account. Does that help you? Or does it just leave you feeling like, gosh, what would I do with that money if I knew where it was? And so that's kind of issue number one. Issue number two is the simplicity of positivism. And so if we look at the data, there are 4 groups of people. There are destructive pessimists, and what they do is they say it'll never work out, and so they don't do anything, and they are the ultimate losers. You have constructive pessimists, and Bill Gates is in this category. What Bill Gates did frenetically as he started Microsoft is he learned all about the tech field, and he watched big companies coming and going. And he absolutely understood the fact that Microsoft was a few accidents away from disappearing off the face of the earth. And he looked at how and why, what were the biggest threats at any given month. But what a constructive pessimist does is they expect these things to go wrong, and they work like hell to see that they don't. Now, constructive pessimists are the most successful in terms of consistent deliverance. I do this in my business when I get 80% of my contract work done early. I expect all kinds of things to go wrong. Then I double. Like if I think it'll take me 2 weeks to do a job, I say it'll take me 4 or 5 weeks. Then I still expect things to go wrong. And so I work like hell and I get it done in 3 weeks. And then it's done early. So this is called constructive pessimism. And you have and then you have a kind of constructive, positive thinker, which expects things to go well, but loves doing extra things, and so they do so much redundant stuff just because they're so excited about it. And so stuff kind of works out. There's lots of stuff that doesn't, but they just keep focusing and keep acting. So constructive positivism is, it's all going to go perfectly, whatever. But they work very actively, and there are lots of things that go wrong, and they just keep looking to the future, but they keep acting. Now, the constructive positive and the constructive pessimist are the winners in this game, because what really matters is the action. Now, the most reliable people are the constructive pessimists, because if you say, what time should we have lunch? The constructive pessimist says, oh, I could run into traffic. That meeting, I never know with that guy. Sometimes he talks for 2 hours. I'm dealing on a job. The crew's running near the water line. If they hit the water line and I have to stop off at the irrigation store and buy this part, we better make it 3 p.m. just to be safe. Would you like me to call if it could be earlier? That's constructive pessimism. And then most of the time, most of those things don't all go wrong. And so the constructive pessimism, pessimist can call up and say, okay, how about a little earlier? I'm free now. Or arrives at the designated place early, prepares, centers, gets some other work done. So this is constructive pessimism. The constructive optimist says, oh, I can't wait to see you. Let's make it 12. I'm sure things will work out. And then, when one of those things doesn't, calls and says, I'll be there in 10 minutes and arrives in 30 minutes. And they're cheerful about it. And, we've made the best and all that. So this is constructive positivism. And then the destructive positivist says that the universe has got my back. A very questionable hypothesis when it comes to things like rent paying and stuff like that. And so I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to wait for the universe to bestow upon me those gifts that it loves to bestow upon me. And then, and then I'm going to be positive. As this doesn't work, I'm going to keep creating delusional positive stories. So you have the 60-year-old man or woman who's waiting for their soulmate and who has been waiting for their soulmate for 20 years and who this month has a new story that maybe they needed to learn this and this and this, and then their soulmate will come. And this is the reason they're not going to get online and go on 100 dates, or et cetera, et cetera. So this is destructive positivism. But of course, within the New Age community and all that, positivism is vehemently sent out with great, you don't seem positive enough. And the biggest danger in all of this is that the most reliable quadrant, Elon Musk, is a constructive pessimist. And this is the greatest example in recent history of the power of constructive pessimism. Elon Musk started 3 companies that, in his own mind, had a 10 to 50% chance of success. And he invested hundreds of millions of dollars of his own money, expecting to fail in quite possibly all three companies, SolarCity, Tesla, and SpaceX. And he worked 100-hour weeks for years. Why? Not because he expected them to win, but because he thought they were important and he wanted to give them a chance. So when you understand how likely it is that you're going to fail, like 9 out of 10 companies fail within 10 years, that means within 10 years you have a 90% probability of failure. What that means is that you're going to have to work harder and smarter and provide better value than 90% of some pretty smart people all around you, or you will fail. Now, if you understand that and you're intelligent and you care about yourself or your business, that means get to work. Now, if you listen to your positive friends and say, oh, it's all going to be wonderful, this is meant to be, you can tell, the person signing the lease, they smiled so nicely, that's a sign, Maybe they smiled so nicely because you paid full price on the lease, and they're thrilled because now they're not going to be part of that 90% failure rate. So there's a place for looking at data. And science, with all of its flaws and limitations, of which there are many, science does provide a far more accurate measuring paradigm for understanding what works and what doesn't work, and constructive pessimism. Winner. But don't expect your metaphysical and positive friends to say, thank you for pointing out what could go wrong, let's work hard to do it. The typical encounter when someone's all excited about something and you say, have you thought about how this could go wrong and that could go wrong? Like, I don't want to think about that. Don't be negative. Don't do this. Don't do that. I need people who support me. And it's like, yes, I want to support you. But if you don't understand the odds and the probability field you're playing in, if you think it's support to send you to Vegas and expect you to come back an untrained gambler as a winner, betting against the odds, and if you wouldn't send your friend to Vegas, why would you send them with a lot more money into starting a business with 90% odds of failure without lots of careful analysis? Vegas has a 60% odds of losing, and that's enough to lose all if you place 50 bets. Starting a business has a 90% odds of failure. What's the bigger gamble? And so you've got to look at this tension between dogma, philosophy, science, and reality. So in the worst case scenario, I had a friend using Lazarus techniques as he played the commodity market, which has an 80%, like all 80% of everyone who plays with commodity futures loses money. So that's the arena he went into, and he's busy using the Lazarus techniques to, this time it's going to work. He's never made money, ever. And yet he's pairing this positivism and this reality creation and choosing to enter a field that has 80% odds of failure. It's not intelligent. You don't come out a consistent winner when you bet heavily against the odds. So this is also an important area around freedom, like I create my own reality, da 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 da. And there is a tension. The probability field determines the group. So you introduce a flu virus into the United States that decimates the immune system of a typical American, and you can say statistically 93% of people are going to be flat on their back within the country within the next year, and 10% of them are going to get dead or are going to die or have some fatal injury. That's the statistic. Now then, this is kind of like betting against the house. So if you enter that environment, if you have an American immune system and you arrive in the country within that probability field, you absolutely can take vitamin C, wear a respirator, do this, and reduce the odds. You can fight to be part of the 7% that doesn't get that flu. And you can go to Vegas, and you can be smart, and you can look at the statistics, and you can do the calculations, and you can try and be part of the 40% who win. And maybe you are fortunate in that. Or you can do something much more intelligent. You can identify what's the most important thing for you. And you can go into a space-time, where the probability is in your favor. I'm in Thailand right now because I love quality, spontaneous, warm, heart-centered time in blocks of roughly 4 hours or more. That just feels great to me. And in Thailand, that happens 10 times more frequently and 10 times easier than in the San Francisco Bay Area. I've done the calculations. In 1 month in Thailand, I will experience more of that than I will in a year in the Bay Area, regardless of what I do. And so I come here where the odds are in my favor. Generally, you want to bet on the environment. If you want to be warm, go to a warm country. The odds are in your favor that you'll be warm. If you want to be cold, go to a cold country. The odds are in your favor that you can easily, repetitively get cold with very little effort. If you want to have intellectual conversations of this nature, the odds are very good in some areas and they are dismal in others. Go to the environment that works. So next issue is prophecy and the use of prophecy. So we have enneagrams, we have astrologies, we have rhythms and patterns, we have Mayan calendars, we have Edgar Cayce, we have all these different things. And the really great news here is these are done for the most part. What I mean is 2000, 2012. Now, if you, as a New Ager, have gone through the year 2000 and 2012, and you feel like this is it, Donald Trump, the current environmental status, the economy, like this is the new age, this is what I've been waiting for all this time, then carry right on and live the dream. But if, like most people, you actually expected, to the degree that you bought into that, something measurably great and positive to occur, and you're like, well, was back in the Carter era when Jimmy Carter was there, it's like, and I can't wait for the millennial. It's like I was thinking for this, or it's like this is the new age. We're going forward. My dad used to delay and procrastinate and avoid and retort that he wasn't going to do a variety of responsible things what was the point? The whole world would change in the year 2000. The new world was coming in, and you'll find all kinds of flaky people that, rack up credit card debt, this, that, the other, because who knows, it may all vanish in the year 2012 or whatever. Well, it hasn't. And so this is the good news. All the big dates are past, and it comes back to us. What can we do with the opportunities and the problems, the joys and the pains that are present for us? What can we do with those? Because it doesn't pay to wait for dates. And if 2012 doesn't, if waiting for 2012 wasn't the panacea, and that's the end of the whole history as we know it, then waiting for the next moment when Mercury isn't retrograde, waiting for the next moment when, the stars say, go ahead with the project. In my personal experience, if I have a good idea, I act on it. And statistically speaking, a certain of those ideas work and take off, and many do not. But by repeatedly acting, some of them grow. And I have a reality today that looked nothing like it looked 10 years, 20 years ago. And those are all the ideas that have taken off. The idea for this phone, the idea for this hotel, the idea for being in Thailand, the idea for this topic, the shirt, the idea for this jewelry. They're all the minority of ideas, meaning of the thousands of ideas that I've had in the last 10 years, those ideas, all in the last 10 years, are the winners, meaning they're all in reality. And all those other thousands of ideas, many of them are not. I've never found it to work to delay a good action until the right time. Do what makes sense to you. Pay attention to reality. That works. Then we have this notion of you create your own reality. No if and or buts. Totally and completely. The rest of the world is an illusion. That's kind of the extreme version that Lazarus has said at various times and is consistent with a fair amount of channeling and metaphysics. And the question is this helpful? And do we again get into that you and you version, where who's the you that's doing this? Because I know how to pick any topic I want and talk about it like that. That's this me. But supposedly there is a me that can look out the window and see a cell phone tower that happens to be there, which I'd rather wasn't there, and can say, oh, no cell phone tower, and it disappears. There's a me confused by most channels with me, because we're going to call them both you again. You are doing that. And you look out and it's like, I've never met a single person who can snap their fingers and disappear a cell phone tower. And then the rationalists will jump in again, the defenders. Oh yes, but you could talk to the cell phone company. You could do this. You could unbolt the bottom and tip it over. You could do this. So you could create your own reality. Yes, I could go down there with a wrench, unwind it, pay the $100,000 fine, and for the week that it had collapsed and everyone was furious with not having their cell phone, it would not be there, or more accurately, it would be laying down. And then, after I paid the penalty for vandalism or became a fugitive or whatever, it could go up again. Or I could spend 2 months negotiating with the cell phone company. Could they move it and buy another piece of land for them and blah, blah, blah. Yes, we're talking rational now. But I don't dislike that cell phone tower enough to pay that $100,000. And that's not news. You create your own reality totally and completely from your choices, attitudes, blah, 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 blah. moment by moment. That sounds like news, just like the millennium and the 2012 sounds like news. But if all that means is that you, like everyone else on the planet throughout history, have the freedom to work like hell to get certain things done, and you have the same limited 24 hours as the rest of us, and so if you devote your life to removing cell phone towers, you haven't written those books, and you haven't gone swimming, and you haven't done, these other things, well, it's not really big news. We have a sphere of influence, and if we act constructively within that sphere of influence, reality improves. And there's plenty of things where I could spend my whole lifetime and probably not eliminate every nuclear bomb. That's not in my sphere of influence. The President of the United States might spend his whole lifetime if he chose. That president probably wouldn't be elected to begin with, given all the sentiment out there, but if he chose, probably couldn't eliminate every nuclear bomb. And yet you have this gobbledygook where supposedly moment by moment, every individual with the whole rest of the world is an illusion, could just snap their fingers. And then where's the data? Where's the data? Going back to positivism and constructive pessimism, where's the data? Where's the one person who says, yeah, I do that all the time. I snap my finger, this traffic clears out. And you do have that. You have people that find great parking places, and you have people that do this. But it doesn't seem to extend to stopping species degradation or eliminating nuclear weapons or healing AIDS. We have people in our reality that do create parking spaces. So there's some kind of a gray area, and it doesn't seem anything but crazy making to take that into this extreme where you try and sit down, and there's plenty of people who've done that over the last 30 years with all this New Age channeling and stuff, and they sit down and world peace or every nuclear weapon or let's have a great president or whatever, and then in some ways it seems like a setup because it's so far out of their sphere of influence. And if you brainwash them into saying, you are doing this, like Lazarus talked to me when I was very young, you are creating your own reality. And I would take my headphones off and I'd hear my parents traumatizing and fighting and hurting the kids and one another. I'd put my heads on, and you doing it, and it's like, I did all the meditations. My parents are still acting out and stuff like that. And it just becomes a source of shame and crazy making, as opposed to liberation. And so where's the line? And so here's some of the other stuff that is just not, not very healthy. A channel, and most apologize. They don't apologize for their impact as a general rule. Whether it's, it's certainly better, in the more human arena, but the lack of apology is rampant. Like, I've never heard a channel apologize. And so then the question becomes, if in the case of Lazarus, where Lazarus said that, they're the highest vibration and, they see things clearer because they're outside the set. So then you validate, and their techniques work and all that, and then you do testing and you find that, no, I worked with you for 10 years on this, and then I worked with this mere mortal, this mere human being, and stuff cleared up in a few weekends. So the evidence doesn't jive, it doesn't cohese. So could you talk, hey Lazarus, I worked with you for 10 years, you said this and this and this, I dated a Lazarus friend who worked with you for another 20 years, neither of us got this working with you, and then we took this workshop and, we get it. Well, we're really sorry. I guess our techniques don't work the best all the time, and we do agree you did learn that much faster there, and we just deliberately wasted your time, or we don't see your reality, and so we're not the best to depend on. So we've kind of left you hanging out there by saying that we see things better and this and that and the other, but we didn't see this. And we have to look and see, yeah, the result of us saying this is that you wasted some time working really hard on this because you believed us. But obviously, we're not teaching this as well as those group of human beings are. So good on you that you found it, and we're sorry. And, how does it feel? Well, it feels pretty lousy, Lazarus. All that time you said you're the highest vibration and ever touched the planet. I felt like an idiot, that it wasn't working. I thought it must be something wrong with me. Well, that's perfectly normal because we said we saw it clearer than you did. And we said we're the highest vibration to ever touch the planet. So I can imagine you were doubting yourself. Yes, I was. It was confusing, and then I couldn't talk to you. That must have been annoying. Yes, it was very annoying. You talk and monologue and monologue and monologue and monologue for 30 years, but you don't listen, Lazarus. You don't ask, show of hands, who's succeeding in this? You don't say, anyone else have more to say? You don't ask, would we like to hear another discussion of the lost civilization of Lemuria, or would we like to discuss our credit card debt? Show of hands. You don't ask. You don't make it easy. And then you say you're my friend, but you're the only friend that charges me $600 to spend a few days together. Yeah, we get that. That's normal human friendships. You're absolutely right. No one else who says they're your friends charges you to spend time with them. Well, why do you do it? Well, the channel has to make some money, but $600,000 for an event? I mean, there's thousands of people paying $600. So that's 600,000. I mean, the channel needs that for 3 or 4 days. I mean, well, that's what the channel wants. Well, Lazarus, you chose the channel. Why did you choose such a greedy channel? Why didn't you choose a channel that was happy with 1,000 a month or 10,000 a month as opposed to 600,000 a month, and got another job in his spare time since he doesn't do channeling a lot? Well, we could have, but we didn't. Well, how do you feel about that? Well, not very good, Lazarus. That's not very, it doesn't seem very considerate. You say you came to learn about humankind. Yes, we did. Well, did we charge you? Have you got a bill for $30,000 per person for an ongoing relationship? No, we don't. Well, why do we have a bill? And why is it taking 30 years to talk about this? Well, we've only got one channel. Well, that's another point, Lazarus. You say you are multiple entities. You're not a I, you're a we. But you chose an I to channel through. Sounds like, since you just showed up in Jack's life, sounds like you could have chosen 5 channels, 10 channels. And we could actually all have had a chance to talk and participate. In fact, you could have taught your workshops more effectively. There could have been the kinetic channel that teaches by doing. There could have been the deep community involvement channel. There could have been the small group channel. There could have been the let's play around and and be more hands-on in the community channel. There could have been multiple expressions of you, but you chose one. Yes, we did. Why did you do that? Well, we're not going to go into that, but we did. Well, you don't like talking about yourself, do you, Lazarus? No, we don't. We talk about ourselves for 5 minutes in 30 years. Well, naturally, that leads to a lot of confusion. Yes, it does. A lot of you are confused. Well, it doesn't feel good to be confused. How about a little bit more forthcoming? Well, you wouldn't understand if we said this and that and the other, Well, then why do you say you're not a teacher and you're not a guru, you're our friend? You can't play it both ways, Lazarus. You can't say, pay us money, we're never going to let you talk, but we're not your teacher, we're not your guru. I mean, let's have a little sanity around this. Well, that's all the time we have. You've sent your $100 to the channel? Yes. Okay, bye for now. So you have all kinds of insanity that can populate what I just kind of explored is, like, does a channel or a guru create their reality? This is dwelling into this you create your own reality. So there's lots of that going around. You create your own reality. So Lazarus has told thousands and thousands of people, you create your own reality. Does Lazarus create their reality? Why do they create so much confusion in their reality? Why do they create a reality where people have to pay all this stuff? I mean, if they don't need the money. So there's something very questionable, in my opinion. It'd be like if I, the parent, go to my child and say, why aren't you having a good life? And I'm like, well, I'm doing things the way you set it up to do. Well, why aren't you having a good life? Well, the way you set it up isn't very conducive to that. It's kind of similar to Lazarus setting up a paradigm in the workshops where they're lecture style and only about 20% of people optimally learn in lecture style. And they're monologues, and less than 20% of people learn optimally in monologues. Most learning is best in dialogue, whether it's small group or one-on-one. Lots of back and forth is how stuff registers. People remember stuff more through doing, so you've got the Lazarus meditation, but it's a lot more interactive and grounding if you get into small groups of people and you write stuff down. And my discovery when I started doing workshops with a variety of people is finding that some worked literally 10 times more potently. Not because the Lazarus material was out of alignment, not because they were smarter than Lazarus or talked about more interesting things or had a nicer vibe, but just the structure of the workshop. They set it up to be conducive to learning. Experiential, hands-on dialogue. People love it. It keeps them awake and engaged. You'll find people sleeping in a Lazarus workshop. You'll find people sleeping in university. It's a lecture format. It's archaic. And you can't take all, well, I think it's a little bit cowardly to first throw on a bunch of people, you're creating your own reality, when they have no conscious framework. I don't think anyone remembers the meeting in which some secret part of them determined how their channel was and wasn't going to show up, how their teacher was going to do this, this, and this, all this stuff. No one said, yeah, I think let's have Lazarus charge more money rather than less. Let's have him monologue rather than dialogue. Let's have him do once a month in some other city, so we have to fly to that city when it's inconvenient. Let's do this, let's do this. And then, yep, we're going to create that reality. That's the best reality that I can think of. So, done, and let's live that reality. It doesn't add up. So then when it doesn't add up, it's a bit cowardly not to have the space for feedback or impact or apology. So according to Lazarus, every person in the world has impact except Lazarus. It's like, because if you take responsibility for impact, some of it has been positive, some has been negative, and an apology and ownership and an explanation and some dialogue about it is relevant. The only person that takes no responsibility for impact is someone that doesn't allow feedback, that doesn't respond to criticism, that doesn't own the pain and that doesn't apologize and in some cases make amends. So, in one situation where a friend of mine Lazarus misdiagnosed a cancer thing. She goes to the MRI and it's there, and Lazarus said it wasn't, and so it's like, it's like, that sounds like a mistake to me, Lazarus. But is Lazarus apologizing, or is it the concept synergy and all that? So because most of my metaphysical world has been 80% in the Lazarus kind of world, that's where that kind of emphasis is coming in. But in talking with different people, this kind of gobbledygook is everywhere. And perhaps the hardest thing that any human being has to do in all of this is decide what to do. So you've got all this gobbledygook, and you've got all these gifts. How do you piece them together? It's quite hard for me because, like, if I try and piece it together with Lazarus, we're the highest vibration to ever touch the planet. We see things better than you because we're outside your set. We are bigger than you, and we're here to help. And we're your friend, we're not your teacher and guru, and you create your own reality. And I try and piece all of it together, and then I see what doesn't work, and it's like, this is so easy with other people, and it's so hard with you, Lazarus. And you kind of wonder, is Lazarus deluded? Are they missing something? Can they be trusted? Do they take responsibility for impact? And if so, what is that responsibility? To what degree? And of course, it would be easy to just throw that all away if there wasn't some great stuff. The coming awakening with crystals and the experience of crystal energy, which I, experience, and all that. So there's lots of good stuff. And I'd say that overall, despite all this gobbledygook, there's more good stuff than bad. There's more sanity than insanity, which is not speaking to how much garbage isn't there. It's speaking to how much goodness has to be there to offset all that. And so, this is important terrain. So I feel we've got to do our own inventory and analysis. What's the money we're spending on a path of growth? What's the time we're spending on a path of growth? What's the mental clarity or insanity being created? What's the emotional healing or pain being created? And how does that relate to other things available to us? So that's another area of gobbledygook. I have almost never met a New Age source that said, we're not the right people for this. These people over here do it better than me. No. So this is a gobbledygook. So I'll have this channel or that channel or this psychic or this energy work, and I'll say, it's not working. This isn't good here. I'm not happy with this. And they'll say, well, sometimes it's like this, sometimes it's like that. Well, what do you suggest I do? Well, let's just let's tweak it a little bit. Let's keep coming back. You say, no, I'm not going to come back. I'm going to go and try these people and these people and these people. And then you find someone that works really well in that arena. And hooray. But they don't work well in some other arena. And but they think they're the cat's meow. And so if you work with at least 20 good practitioners and do this calculated analysis, you will probably discover what I discovered. This guy is great at healing physical back pains and this. This guy is very polite and easy to talk to. this woman is wonderfully magical and kind of awakens, through, sexuality and different energy vibes and fantasy and stuff, brings you alive, but doesn't make a lot of sense. This person makes complete and total sense, but you kind of get the feeling they don't like you. Well, I don't want to open up my heart to someone who doesn't really like me. Well, they don't, so okay. And this person is wonderful in this area. Lazarus has this great vocabulary and breadth of insight and stuff, but terrible when it came to solving detailed relationship challenges and stuff like that, and terrible helping my friend make money, this and that, and it's, so you will be able to have a database of what works in what area. And unfortunately, with the level of ethics and with the level of self-awareness and the level of language that we're dealing with, it's all called channeling, it's all called energy work, it's all called personal growth, or whatever, you're not going to get a sense. They're not going to tell you, I'm a 3 when it comes to money strategy, and I'm an 8 when it comes to resonant shame healing. I'm a 5 when it comes to physical manipulation. I'm a 10 when it comes to, emotionally being present and leading the way in an empathic sense for you. And this is, of course, maddening. Why aren't we reaching, if they're updating the iPad app, annoyingly every few weeks to add some little feature, why are we dealing with a 2,000-year-old vocabulary with one word for love and one word for energy work and good and bad and no number scales? I mean, it's just dismal relative to what it could be, relative to what we deserve. And our best people ought to be working on updating the whole healing paradigm, where you have your therapist, which, independent of your feelings and your waves, it's completely sociopathic in some areas. It's like you've got overwhelming shame that you don't know how to deal with alone. Great, let's see, how does 1 hour listening to you talk about that in 2 weeks sound? Well, it doesn't sound very good. I'm dealing with that right now. Well, this is how I've designed my money-making practice, is most people can't afford this and that. I don't want to sit around waiting for people to have emergencies, so I schedule myself very tight, because we all know it's about making money and being efficient, and this is just how you fit into my routine. Well, it doesn't fit good at all. I'm in absolute shame right at this moment. No one in this culture wants to talk about it. They're all running like, scared chickens just by the word, and no one has more than a texting length of time, and I'm dealing with this. Well, bye. I've got to go for my next healing appointment. It doesn't feel very good. It's not attuned to what you and I need at that moment. Well, of course, we're supposed to be magnanimous and do what's good for the therapist and be generous and be polite and be grateful and all of that. But someone's got to say at some point, the reason we've got so many addicts and all that is that this doesn't cut it. If someone has to choose between getting drunk or bottling up all their feelings and then once a week getting into it and then getting overwhelmed, and then while they're in a dissociated state, time's up, bye, off you go. And then no clear tools of what to deal with, and no commitment, and no, if you need me, call me. No. I'd rather get drunk and deal with it that way. We've got to look that people are doing the best they can within a given set of tools and protocols, many of which are not optimal, all of which could be vastly improved. So what else? So we've got you create your own reality, and then we get, but which is bolstered up by all these anecdotes of parking stories and sales meetings and this and that and the other, but no one is apparently snapping their fingers and visualizing the restoration of the oceans or the disappearing of the plastic island. And so I think for sanity, you've got to rephrase that to visualizing helps my sales meetings, it helps my athletic performance, and it helps my parking places. It has dubious to no results in reducing the world's plastic island in the ocean. I visualize, I ask the scientists, has the plastic in the ocean disappeared? No. I visualize again, no. Visualize again, no. Of course, our brain is very powerful, and if we teach ourselves that a given focus is really important, we will start acting. And so we will start putting our potency and our force in play, and perhaps we will donate some money to a scientist that's melting plastic and recycling it, and a floating barge that could deal with that, or a new robot to design that mines the plastic to create all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of great possibilities. But just sitting and visualizing thoughts and not doing any of that doesn't seem to have that result. And if over a 20-year period you invest and grow and you pull off a big humanitarian success in this result, there's lots of people who are not saying they create their own reality, then the entire world is an illusion, who are working very hard for 20 years to do that. And so then the question is it more crazy making, or is it more useful to refer primarily to a doctrine that says, I created all, everything else is an illusion? I've been creating all kinds of things my whole life. They all basically start the same. I imagine it, I get excited, I create a list of goals, and I assess whether I'm willing to do all of that in order to create that result. If I'm not, I don't do it, and I just accept that I could, if I was willing to work the year, the 2 years, the 6 months to do it. When I do it, there's a certain amount of those that work very well. There's some that don't. Sometimes I learn something I'm interested even more, and I change and go and do that. And that creates what it creates. So I think this pretty much covers it. And the biggest piece in this whole mix of possible gobbledygook that I think is the unspoken piece in the West, where the focus is all on the individual, is the fact that we must engage as a group to create a group environment that has a probability field in which the individual, the vast majority of individuals, win in that area. And if and when we can do that, to create a probability field in which the majority of people can take their natural impulse to love, to create, to feel pleasure, to engage, to support one another, and lift that into a reality that's there on a daily basis, an environment that makes that possible. I think that rather than being a lonely struggle for small groups of individuals to beat the odds, to make money in a dwindling economy, to be positive in a environment of chaos and change, to share generously in an environment of a lot of fear and scarcity, to create and give birth to new ideas in a reality where many people are way too busy to support or think of them. That we can actually begin, if and when we are ready, to create pockets and groups where beautiful things do happen for beautiful reasons the majority of the time. And we want to create a reality where the odds are in our favor, and we will know we are successful when the majority of human people are feeling filled with warmth, safety, love. And we can look to pockets like Copenhagen in Denmark, where there's great sense of safety and peace and well-being relative to what's going on in many other places in the world, because of the safety that the government and country has co-created together in their socialist democracy. It's very beautiful what they've created in my interviews over there. We can start creating an environment that is conducive to personal well-being, that's easier to feel fun, joy, healthy, and happy and generous than harder. And that's it for now.